Good morning. Ready now, I think. Let's start class with some singing this morning. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Thou art the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will, while I am waiting, yielded and still. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Search me and try me, Master, today. Whiter than snow, Lord, wash me just now, as in thy presence humbly I bow. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being, and sway. Fill with thy spirit, till all shall see Christ only, always living in me. Change my heart, O God, make it ever new. Change my heart, O God, may I be like you. You are the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me, this is what I pray. Change my heart, O God, make it ever new. Change my heart, O God, may I be like you. Make me a servant, Lord, make me like you. For you are a servant, make me one too. Make me a servant, do what you must do. To make me a servant, Lord, make me like you. It's interesting how many songs we can connect to the potter's wheel, is it not? Any of you done any pottery?
You got or even I got a potter's wheel and clay for Christmas.
Oh.
And we tried making some cups with that.
And
It was interesting because he was moving his hands like this while he was trying to turn it. So it turned out too well, but it's not fun.
it tends to turn you instead of you turning it, right?
Yeah.
Anybody else experiences with making pottery of any kind? I think my only experiences is standing by my grandson and watching him try to do it at the arts festival, whatever. Interesting process. Well, we're going to get to the pottery stuff in chapter 18 and chapter 19, but there's a couple of passages that I want to go to first. Starting in Jeremiah, the end of Jeremiah chapter 16. Lord, my strength and my fortress, my refuge in times of distress. To you the nations will come from the ends of the earth and say, our ancestors possessed nothing but false gods, worthless idols that did them no good. Do people make their own gods? Yes, but they are not gods. Therefore I will teach them. This time I will teach them my power and might. Then they will know that my name is the Lord. Sort of a few words of hope at the end of Jeremiah 16. We don't see much hope in Jeremiah, do we? Actually, there's a lot of hope in Jeremiah. You just have to sort of look for it. But it is there as in this passages here. And with the whole emphasis of this passage is that our hope is in God. And it's another one of those places where we get Jeremiah and God both talking. And you really have to go watch out going through Jeremiah as to who's talking. And we'll look at another passage here in a minute that especially emphasizes that. So what I've started doing as I've been reading, if I find Jeremiah talking, I will put a little J by it. And then when God starts talking, when those, in my Bible at least, it's got parentheses when God's talking, or it says, and the Lord said, or whatever. I put a little G there, actually a capital G, not a little G, and capital J. So you can see what's going back and forth. And here Jeremiah is talking, and he's talking about God being hope. Jeremiah 14:8 says, you are the hope of Israel. 14:22, our hope is in you. Get over to 17:3, Lord, you are the hope of Israel. And Jeremiah uses that word hope a number of times there. And there is that idea that despite all of this other mess that we're going through, that we're talking about, that there's hope. And Jeremiah, when he talks about the Lord being my strength, my fortress, my refuge, those strong, strong words. You know, you're there, God. You're there for me. And then he says, look, the nations will come to you. Boy, isn't that hopeful? It's not just Israel's going to come back to you. The nations will come to you. And wasn't that God's purpose all along for making Israel his own people? That the nations would see Israel and see Israel's obedience and following after God, and that they would want to be like Israel. Of course, we found out it's happened the other way around. The nations will come, and then it's in verse 21 that God speaks. It says, I will teach them. This time I will teach them my power and my might. They will know that my name is the Lord. I will teach them. Who's them? Jeremiah is saying the nations will come. So who's them? The nations. Yeah. I'll teach everyone. So God's not just saying, I'm going to teach Israel this time. I'm going to show Israel. No, I will teach them. It's a word of hope that God lays out. And he repeats, I will teach them. I will teach them. This time I will teach them my power and my might. God doesn't give up. God doesn't give up, does he? Despite everything that the nations do, that we do as individuals, God doesn't give up. It doesn't seem to. So God's going to teach them what has to happen in order for us to be taught.
You have to give them
Being broken.
Broken. Okay. Sometimes, yeah. You have to listen for us to be taught, right? For us to learn, we've got to listen, right? I mean, I can stand up here and teach you all day. And if you're all asleep, there's not a whole lot that's going to sink in. Maybe osmosis somehow. So we have to be open, and we'll look at that again and when we get to chapter 18. So I will teach them God's sense of hope. Second passage I want to look at is in chapter 17. starting with verse 7. But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. He'll be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. Does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? The Lord search the heart and examine the mind to reward each person according to their conduct, according to what their deeds deserve. I think it's interesting. I read from Psalm 1 last week when we were talking about the wicked are like the chaff that the wind blows away. That's in Psalm 1. That's in Jeremiah. Look at this passage in verse 8. You're going to be like a tree planted by the water. It sends out its roots by the stream. It doesn't fear the heat. Its leaves are always green. Never fails to bear fruit. Again, Psalm 1. Blessed is the one who does not walk in the step with the wicked, or stand in the way the sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. The person is like the tree planted by the stream. It'll be like a tree planted by the water, which yields its fruit in season. Never fails to bear fruit. And whose leaf does not wither. Its leaves are always green. Everything prospers. I believe that probably Jeremiah has read the Psalms. Do you not say that? You know, there's definitely, and if you go past chapter 1, go to chapter 2, and we might get there here in a minute. Chapter 2, it's talking about, in the Psalms, it's talking about God's relationship to the nations. Yeah. Jeremiah's read the Psalms. So there's this beautiful passage there. And who's speaking in that passage? Verse 7 and verse 8. Verse 7 and 8. Who's talking? Yeah, the Lord. Yeah, God speaking in the passage. And it's one of those long passages where God speaks, and all of a sudden we get to verse 9, and who's talking? Jeremiah is talking. Jeremiah is talking. And he says, the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? The word deceit here, it's the same root word in the Hebrew that we get the name Jacob from. Interesting enough. Remember Jacob? Jacob was upright man, wasn't he? Treated his brother properly, right? Treated his father-in-law just fine, even though his father-in-law didn't treat him very well. Was Jacob deceitful? Yeah. What did Jacob deceive Esau out of? His birthright. What else? His blessing. Yeah. And Genesis 27:36, Esau says, isn't he rightly named Jacob? This deceiver. He and the name literally is he who grasped the heel, because they were twins born, and as they came out, we find Jacob grasping Esau's heel. Deceitful, full of deceit. Who else did Jacob later deceive? I've already mentioned it. His father-in-law. Yeah. When was that, Irma? No, okay. His father loved to see Jacob. We know that. Jacob worked 7 years for Rachel, yeah. And his father-in-law gave him Leah, right? So he worked 7 more years for
Rachel.
Okay. And then he worked, wasn't quite 7, I don't think, about 6.5 years for the sheep, yeah, the flock. Yeah. And during that time, Jacob's mixing in, telling him you can have these, and Jacob arranges it, made some to where all the sheep turned out to be his. So and then he loads his family up and leaves, runs away from Laban. So look at that verse. The heart is deceitful above all things, beyond cure. Who can understand it? Is the heart deceitful above all things? Is the heart beyond cure?
We can say things whether it's right or wrong, but to be right or to be wrong, we're still looking at it and saying,
It's beyond cure.
it's just kind of scary. Is it beyond here?
Is it beyond cure? I'm asking.
I'll leave with God's help. I don't think we can do it. We're deceived because we're thinking the right thing, but God looks at the heart and he sees what you're really up to. He sees what you're really thinking. He sees where you're going to go. Even before you go there.
So when you read this verse, you have to ask myself, Herman, is your heart deceitful? Is your heart deceitful? Do you know your heart? Does it deceive you? Richard, is your heart deceitful? Cindy, is your heart deceitful? Is your heart deceitful?
At times.
No, it's beyond cure. It's beyond cure. It's always deceitful. Irma, is your heart deceitful?
Yes.
Do you know your heart? I think we have to be real careful when we're reading through the Bible and notice who's talking. Notice God has been talking about, blessed is he true trust in the Lord. He's going to be like this. He's going to be great. And then Jeremiah interrupts and says, the heart's deceitful. It's beyond cure. It's bound to die. It's irrevocably sick. Now, one verse he pops in, and then God replies, I, the Lord, will search the heart and examine the mind to reward each person according to their conduct, according to what their deeds deserve. Can the heart be deceitful?
It's a child. Sometimes children don't even know what to do.
Yeah.
They don't know their heart. Sometimes adults don't know their heart either.
Our conscience is not always true.
Yeah.
It is not always innocent. Paul's life, he was in good conscience, destroying the church. The Lord touched him, his conscience.
Paul says, I know what to do, but I don't do it. And that I don't want to do, I find myself doing. Paul knew his heart. His heart wasn't deceiving him, but other things could happen also. Yes, our heart can deceive us. Yes, we can be deceived. Is our heart deceitful beyond repair? No, God steps in and says, I know the heart. I search the heart. And you notice he connects the heart, the mind, and the actions. I search the heart. I examine the mind. And I reward according to their conduct, according to what you said. Our heart can be pure as gold. Our mind can be thinking the right way, and our actions can go the wrong way, can't they? God's there if we trust in the Lord. I think this is a real important passage. Trust in the Lord. Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. When we have confidence in him, our heart is not eternally deceptive. It's not eternally deceitful. And God's going to search that heart, and he's going to look for our heart. He's going to look for our mind, our thinking. He's going to look at our actions. I think that's an important passage. And we can conclude, I think, that failure to abide in God, that's when we have a sick heart. And not only a sick heart, but that's when our mind goes, that's when our actions go also. Any other comments along that way?
Yes, I've always been interested. So I read Psalms 2, the first Psalm 1, where it says the tree is planted by water that sends out the roots. Is that referring to it's close enough, the tree is close enough to the water that it will continually keep it going, keep it nourished, keep it alive? And that's the relationship God is referring to us, keep that relationship
that
with him,
trust.
and we'll have that.
It's a good connection.
When worries come or fear comes.
Absolutely. Excellent connection. Clyde Francisco, I thought, had an interesting outline. He uses this verse, calls it the depravity of the heart, and he uses this verse to talk about the deceitfulness of the heart. Then he uses some other passages talking about that the heart is incurably afflicted, that there's a blinding nature that comes with sin, that there's an enslaving power that comes with sin, that sin is what brings the heart even unto death. And then there is a cure for the heart also, a cure that only God can diagnose the heart. And then he goes into chapters 18 and 19 and talks about the freedom of the heart as well. So it's a good passage. And so that brings us to chapter 18, where we probably went there and said, okay, I can understand this one. This one is about the potter and the wheel, and we can get that. I need to leave that up for you a minute. Matt, to finish. Copy.
No, I'm good.
You're good. Okay. All right. Chapter 18. This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Go down to the potter's house, and there I will give you my message. So I went down to the potter's house. I saw him working at the wheel, but the pot he was shaping from clay was marred in his hands. So the potter formed it into another pot, shaping it as seemed best to him. Then the word of the Lord came to me, and he said, Can I not do with you, Israel, as this potter does, declares the Lord? Like a clay in the hand of the potter, so you are in my hand, Israel. If at any time I announce that a nation or kingdom is to be uprooted, torn down, and destroyed, and if that nation I warned repents of its evil, then I will relent and not inflict on it the disaster I had planned. And if at another time I announce that a nation or kingdom is to be built up and planted, and if it does evil in my sight and does not obey me, then I will consider the good I had intended to do for it. Now therefore, say to the people of Judah and those living in Jerusalem, this is what the Lord says. Look, I'm preparing a disaster for you and devising a plan against you. So turn from your evil ways, each one of you, and reform your ways and your actions. But they will reply, it's no use. We'll continue with our plans. We'll all follow the stubbornness of our evil hearts. Before we talk about that, just watch this video for a minute. I'm going to let it run a couple of times. I want to get your thinking, some comments from you as to what you're observing here. You can watch that over and over and over. What do you see? What's some of your observations from there?
He's having a bad day.
He's having a bad day.
Clay's not doing what he wants, so he's starting over.
The Clay's not doing what he wants, so he's starting over. Okay.
Beating it too.
He's beating it too. You know, it's sort of a violent act when he collapses that down. You know.
As long as the clay is moist enough, you can reshape it, whatever you desire.
Okay. It's staying, keeping moist and damp so it can be reshaped. I don't know if you notice, and sometimes in this, some of the clay is moister than other clay is. What else do you notice?
Can be reshaped.
Can be reshaped. Yeah.
Take your time, then it quickly form into the shape you think it would, because I've never seen it done like that. And I've always seen it, it's always going around the shape of it, and it's looking good, and it's coming together, but this picture looks like there's a step that you don't normally see.
Yeah.
I guess.
He pretty quickly notices when it's out of shape. And do you notice when it's out of shape necessarily every time that he starts over? Looks, in some cases, like here, that looks pretty good to me. What's the deal? You know, there it goes collapsing again.
The potter is in charge.
And the potter's in charge. That's right. He knows it. And you see that violent action that he's got there? And the other thing I noticed here is he's not trying to reshape a little bit of it, is he? He just totally collapses and starts over, doesn't he? Yeah.
Is he working for perfection? Does he
Pardon?
want to be perfect?
He's got
His
something in mind. He's got a certain purpose, got a certain good purpose. It's not meeting its purpose. It's
He can make whatever he wants to with the plane, the bowl, or a.
Ace, whatever.
yeah.
The clay is reusable for other things other than what we never started with.
Yeah. So there's lots of things that we can learn here, is there not? I am told, or I read, that there are about 30 words in the Hebrew vocabulary that relate directly to pottery. So pottery making would have been a big industry in Israel. It'd be an industry that people understood pretty quickly. In fact, we'll see in chapter 19 that there's even a gate going in and out of Israel that's related to pottery. And so it's a big thing. Potters were big business. And we'll stop that. That's what they would use during those days. You've got two parallel stone wheels, and they're joined together with a shaft. And so the potter sits there and he turns the bottom wheel with his feet and shapes from the top. So it isn't quite as easy as the modern pottery making, is it? Because he's got to turn that at a pretty constant level for it to turn right. No. So we have this object lesson that that God gives Jeremiah. He tells him to go down to the potter's house, go down there and I'll give you this message. Go down there and observe. And so he goes down and he sees the potter working at the wheel, but the pot that he's making, the clay in his hands is marred in his hands, it says. Now, there's a lot of things that could cause the shaping of the clay to fail. Obviously, the human element causes it, can cause it to fail. But the clay could become too wet in areas and collapse. The object that's been made, it could get off center and sort of fly off the wheel. Air bubbles could ruin a piece, or some foreign matter could be in the clay that it messes it up. Now, one other thing that I noticed is that at no point did this potter try to fix the little flaw itself. So in the same way, this little thing fixed. So I always started over. Now, the New English translation reads verse 4. Now and then there would be something wrong with the pot. Sort of get the idea that this is a regular thing. Maybe the verb here is repeated or continuous motion. So maybe translated whenever there would be something wrong, because the something wrong is going to come. That's a part of it. So God expects there to be something wrong. The potter would expect to be something wrong. And the word marred here, where it talks about the clay was marred in his hands.
This version says spoiled.
Spoiled, okay. The verb is the same that we get in chapter 13, verse 7, that we talked about last week with the belt, with the linen belt. It became ruined or it became spoiled. And so it's the same verb here. It's good for nothing. It's marred. So the potter forms it into another pot, shaping it, as seems best to him. And again, there's no waste here. The Hebrew basically says the potter reshaped it as it was right in his eyes to do. So God says, okay, the lesson is, can I not do with you as this potter does? Can I not do to you as this potter does? Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. 2 Corinthians 4:7. We have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God, not from us. Verse 6 here. Like clay in the hands of the potter, so are you in my hand, O Israel. So God is the master potter over the lives and affairs of men, but what determines whether the pottery is going to be made. The potter,
He's in charge, it's his, and he makes out of it what he wants.
so how come sometimes it doesn't come out right?
It can be, like you say, different things, get in it and mess it up. That's, you gotta consider that.
It's
You have to reshape and reform and take out.
It's the clay's response to the potter that makes that difference, isn't it? The nature of the clay and its response to determine whether it's going to be a good vessel or not. And yet God can take it, collapse it with his mercy and his grace, reshape it, not throw it away. And so the Life Change Series Bible study says, here we have the true but mysterious blending of divine sovereignty, God in control, and human responsibility. We have a responsibility to respond to the shaping that God is doing. And then God leaves a message here. He talks about this uprooting and destroying, this building up and planting. And if you notice in verse 7, 7 through 10, there's 4 ifs there. If the nation, I've got this plan, but if the nation does this, then I'll do this. If this happens, then I'll do this. If. And so, somebody says, but God said he was going to do this. And it didn't happen. Is God's word not good?
Of course.
Pardon?
Of course not.
Of course it's good, but God's word is conditional. God's word is conditional on the response that he receives. The potter's making of the clay is conditional upon the response from the clay itself. God talks about preparing a disaster or preparing a blessing. And the word for preparing is translated elsewhere of forming, of fashioning particular things. Notice verse 12. The people's response. But they will reply, it's no use. What do you think's meant by that?
Change their mind.
Pardon?
They're not gonna change their mind.
They're not going to change their mind? Okay.
Being stubborn.
Stubborn? What about, huh?
We don't want to.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to. I'm going to be stubborn. I don't care. I don't see the problem. And I think that was a lot of what was going on with Israel. I don't see the problem. I don't see the problem. This is the way God made me. You hear people say that? This is the way God made me. I'm beyond help. It's too late. I'm beyond help. I know better than that. I've arrived. I've reached a point. I know what's best for me. It's no use.
Don't bother.
Yeah, don't bother. It's important for us to remain moldable, is it not? At whatever age that we are. And we all know where we are in this class, don't we? You know, it's important for us to remain open to the change of God. I like this quote from Andrew White, who was a Scottish preacher. The victorious Christian life is a series of new beginnings. Victorious Christian life is a series of new beginnings. And so every morning we have the chance to begin again, do we not? Yeah, every morning. All right. I don't have much time, but let's go on to chapter 19. Instead of reading this all, God tells Jeremiah this time, he tells him to go down to the potsherd gate. I'm going to go out past the reading. You see, it's a long reading. So the potsherd gate is also called the dung gate. And what does that symbolize to you?
Waste.
Waste. Yeah, garbage. Yeah. This is where all the broken pieces and all the pots would have been thrown. Southern gate in Jerusalem, where the people would throw their garbage and throw their refuse. And he also mentions here, go to the valley of Ben Hinnom, which is right here. So all there together. And the valley of Ben Hinnom, he later mentions also, he calls it Topheth. So the valley of Ben Hinnom, Topheth meant fireplace. Topheth was a hearth, a fireplace, a pit. Also is similar to the Hebrew word meaning shameful thing. This is where child sacrifices have been done. Yeah. So they sacrificed children to idols and threw them into the fire. And this would be, in the Greek, we get the word Gehenna, hell, from this area. Right? So this is pretty substantial. And he tells him to go down and buy a clay jar from a potter. Well, obviously we're not going to get through it. But he buys it and he breaks it, right? And so the message here is sometimes you get to the point where you're not moldable anymore. If you get to the point where you're not moldable, then all you're good for is to be broken and trashed and become garbage. Yeah. So there's a warning, there's an encouragement for us to still be mobile, and yet there's an idea of we can become so stubborn that we can become trash. And I think, going back to other books of the Bible, I think the encouragement comes if you then turn and look at the book of Jonah and look how God sent Jonah to a nation that was trash.
They were still valuable.
What's still valuable. Yeah. All right, 6 chapters next week. I won't make you read it every day, okay? But try to read through those 6 chapters. Thank you.
Thank you.